to convert to Buddhism. The question was always phrased this way. Now, basically, there are just two commitments we really make when we want to commit ourselves to the Buddhist path. One is this business of refuge, and the second is, I will explain both. Second is, you commit to lead an ethical life. Now, what is refuge? What are the common things in which we take refuge? I've got so much money, let anybody oppose me. I have taken refuge in money. My uncle is a good lawyer, and his brother is in the assembly or is in the Lok Sabha. Let anybody mess with me, I'll show them. So these are the sort of worldly refuges we take. Now on the spiritual path, when we say we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, what it means really is, first you accept the Buddha as your teacher. As a human being, not a god. So there is no question of taking refuge in a god or a deity here. So the Buddha is a human being, but who achieved the highest potential of consciousness that any human being can possibly achieve or has achieved over history. So we are saying, when we say I take refuge in the Buddha, you are saying I accept. In fact, it is technically wrong to say I take refuge, because taking is grasping. I'll take that flask from you and have a drink. But I go to the Buddha for refuge. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Gacchami means to go. Gacchami doesn't mean to take. So I go to the Buddha for refuge, which means I accept the Buddha as my teacher. It doesn't mean you cannot have other teacher. You can have your physics teacher in college or your maths teacher somewhere else. But you are taking for the spiritual path, the Buddha is your teacher. Now, all teachers of various religions have a lot of things in common. Be good, avoid evil, good thoughts, good words, good deeds. Everything is common. But as the Dalai Lama says, at the philosophical level, there are many differences. It doesn't mean I can say, oh, only my Buddhist philosophy is correct and all of you are on the wrong path. It's not that. But we do have to acknowledge even the differences. So you cannot say, I take everybody as my teacher. It's like saying, oh, I have to reach the mountaintop. I can take any path. Yes, you can take any path, but you have to take one path and follow that path. You can't keep jumping. You can't go 100 feet up and say, hey, I think, oh, that's all right. Thank you. So if you cannot go up 100 feet and say, oh no, I don't think this is quite the right path. Let's go back. No, I think this path looks more attractive. There is shade over there. And then when the sun comes out there, you again go somewhere else. So yes, all paths lead to one goal, but you have to select your path. And when you say take refuge in the Buddha, you are accepting his teachings completely. The philosophy, the practice, and the ethical norms for behavior. So once you say the Buddha is my teacher, the Dharma is nothing but his teachings. So you cannot accept the Buddha and then not accept his teaching. There's no thing like accepting the Buddha, but I don't accept his teachings. It is possible to accept the teachings. Many people accept the teachings in part at least and say reject the Buddha and say I am not a Buddhist. That may be possible. So taking refuge in Dharma means I accept what he has said totally and completely. So of course he has said you can examine my teachings and reject what you don't like. But that's a bit like the shopkeeper saying, if there's anything wrong with this product, you bring it back tomorrow, I'll give you twice the money. He's not saying, therefore, that there are defects in his product. He's actually trying to affirm that my product is flawless. So when the Buddha says, if you can find some stones in the kheer, throw them out, he's not saying there may be stones in the kheer. He's saying, no, my kheer is so pure, you won't find any stones. So you take the Dharma as your basic guide to how to live. And when you say, I take refuge in the Sangha, Sangha can be understood at various levels. All of us can be considered as being part of the Sangha. Anybody who even is interested in Buddhism and is here. And in a way, we do take refuge even in this Sangha because we help each other. If there is a problem, somebody helps. She said, now explain this to them. I'm explaining something. So there is certain refuge. Hello. So, so therefore, but when we say I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the Sangha that is referred to is the Arya Sangha. Arya Sangha, which are the immediate people who have reached or have almost reached enlightenment, the Aryas. So the next step is commitment to leading an ethical life, which, as she explained in the morning, is not the Ten Commandments. It's not written in stone. Some of the some of the precepts are also a reflection of social norms. In fact, she was present when I once asked this question to my teacher that in the Vinaya, homosexuality is complete no, it's a sexual misconduct. But today, talking against a person who is gay might be considered not only politically incorrect, but could be offensive. So does hmm? Also medically incorrect. So obviously, sexual misconduct, the definition of that changes also. And the way she replied was, yes, certain things are written in stone. Killing. You cannot say, now social norms allow killing, so let's go around on a killing spree. There are communal riots going on, so we can kill each other now. Or there is war, so now, or there is capital punishment. So mostly Buddhists are against capital punishment, they are against war and so on. But at least be true to the ethics you have adopted for yourself. I think if I feel that drinking coffee is unethical, I should not drink coffee. If I think it's unethical, I don't impose it on you or anybody else. So the 5 precepts represent an undertaking to follow a training. In fact, the actual translation is I undertake to accept the training rule to not take life. So since we are all under training when we take the refuge, when we take the precepts, we should accept that we may even fail sometimes. So as she said, when you fall, you get up again. And that's why she said, because it's not written in stone, you can even drop one precept. So that's the meaning of taking refuge and reciting and accepting the precepts. Thank you. All those announcements Suruchi will make at the appropriate moment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, for anyone who doesn't know and is curious, then the figure behind is of Avalokiteshvara or Chenrezig Kuan Yin in the 1,000-armed manifestation. Avalokiteshvara is the symbol of Bodhisattva of compassion. And he comes in many forms. In China, he turned into a she, called Kuan Yin, but normally it's in male form. And he comes at 2-armed, 4-armed, 6-armed, 8-armed. He's very adaptable. But here he is in his 1,000-armed form. And in each palm of the hand, if you can see, but you probably have to look very close, is an eye. And that represents that compassion is not blind. Compassion is conjoined with clear seeing or wisdom, so that the acts of compassion are appropriate to the situation. And so, sometimes people are very compassionate, but they don't have too much wisdom. And it creates many problems for themselves and others. But in the form of the Bodhisattva, of compassion. His compassion is filled with deep understanding and wisdom and knowing what to do in each situation. So anyway, so this is him. Okay, so we are going to just have a Q&A here. Hmm? How can I help a friend who is trapped in depression which causes addiction such as alcohol? Well, of course, if there was a simple way of dealing with this, life and world would be a very different place. It's not easy, even with the very best will in the world, even if we ourselves are the ones who have depression or are addicted to alcohol or anything else. To cure ourselves is also very difficult, what to say of curing someone else. And of course, it depends why they're depressed and so forth. There are many factors involved in all this. I think the first thing is just to let them know that somebody cares. Because a lot of people, when they are in depression, it's because they feel so alienated and isolated and alone. So I don't know what to say. I mean, it's such a general thing. Who knows why someone is depressed, whether it's external factors, internal factors, psychological factors, karmic factors. You know, one can't give a general overview of, yes, you should do this and that and everything's going to be wonderful, because it doesn't work like that. So depending on the circumstances, the first thing is just to let them know that you're there for them, whatever is their problem. And then if they have any particular spiritual path, to encourage them to, incorporate that more in their life. If it's psychological factors, maybe they could see a skillful psychiatrist. If they happen to be Buddhist, maybe you could send them for a metta retreat. I mean, it's very hard to say what, because depression is a huge thing nowadays. I mean, it's growing. And, it's interesting that often the people who are depressed are not the ones that externally you think should be depressed, but people who often outwardly appear to, be okay, and yet inwardly they are so filled with despair. So this is why also, a huge market in antidepressants in America. I mean, enormous. And yet outwardly it looks like they're in a pure land, I mean, so many of them. And yet inwardly their lives are so meaningless. So one of the causes of depression is that people feel their lives are very meaningless. And then to talk with them about that and try to give them some motivation and some hope. I don't know what to say. It's not an easy, there's no blanket solution to something like that. Depression is, of course, by so many outer and inner factors. And then, as a means of covering it, people get addicted to eating chocolate or drinking alcohol. I mean, or just spending all their time on their smartphones. If anybody has, I mean, people write books about how to overcome depression, but people are still depressed. I don't know. I mean, one meets people all the time who are talking about how depressed they feel inside. And it's, sometimes one can see that there might be some way to work through it. And other times, I don't know. I mean, if you go to a psychiatrist, they give you a pill. That's a good question. since you advocate rightly that any place is okay for practice, why do Buddhist teachers and monks go to mountains? Okay. Two questions. Can we achieve realization in our own residence as a householder? What practices? What are the practices? Well, we've just been doing what the practices are. Yes, of course. I mean, some of the greatest gurus and teachers have been essentially our householders. So there is nothing against it, except that one of the problems is a distracted mind, and it's much easier to undistract the mind when one is not surrounded by distractions. So for this reason, the Buddha and subsequent teachers would recommend going off into a quiet, undisturbed environment while our minds are still rather fluttery. Then it definitely does help to be in a supportive environment. And in a supportive environment means an environment which is essentially quiet and with the absence of external distractions such as televisions and people visiting and so forth. So yes, of course, we are trying to get our mind one-pointed, and it certainly, while we are still just fledglings, it definitely helps to have external conducive environment in order to cultivate an internal conducive environment. So when the mind is stable and we are well centered and well balanced, then wherever we go it makes no difference. Of course, I mean, undoubtedly, those great masters, wherever they are in the marketplace or up on the top of a mountain, is all the same. But since we're not great masters, it makes sense to help ourselves. But most people, they balance it by doing occasional retreats away from home. And so then usually those retreats are in places which are very isolated and conducive. That also primes the mind to remember this is something different, and now we're supposed to practice. It's harder to convince ourselves when we're still in the middle of very familiar circumstances and the people around us don't know we're trying to practice. So even if we have a place where we could shut the door, nonetheless, sometimes it's good to go right away into a different environment, because that, as I say, that perks up the mind to recognize this is something different and this is where we're supposed to be practicing. Nature is always very healing, and so normally it is recommended to go somewhere which is surrounded by natural. I mean, one could do, on a nice high rise in the middle of the city, and if you've got double glazing, it will be fairly quiet, and you might even have a lovely view of the sky because if you're high enough. But because the vibrations around, nonetheless, even if they're not, directly impinging on the senses, the vibrations around are very different, very active and activated. It's very different feeling from being just in somewhere surrounded by trees and flowers and the sky and so forth. So that's the reason. The mind settles much easier in a quiet, conducive area. But of course, the point is that if we can only practice when we're in a nice, conducive, quiet, natural area and we fall to pieces the minute we get back into the home again or into the city, then clearly we need to really practice a lot more, because ideally it should be the same. The Buddha said that wherever we go, we should keep a cave and forest mind. So the mind should stay the same. whether we're in the middle of the city or whether we're in the countryside. How do monks and nuns handle their sexual instincts? We'll ask them. What should be the sexual code of conduct of a single person? Okay. Well, of course, monks and nuns are not, again, a nice big blob, everybody thinking the same and doing the same. I personally think it's easier for nuns than monks. I think the monks probably have more problems because the male sexual instinct is often much stronger. And the monks I know personally seem to manage perfectly well. They are at very ease with women. They look very happy, you look in their eyes and they look perfectly peaceful and content. They're not in the least bit fidgety or concerned about women. I mean, for example, the monks in our monastery down the road treat our nuns like they're Dharma sisters, and you see when they're interacting with each other, they're perfectly at ease, just like brothers and sisters. There doesn't seem to be, I've never seen any of them getting fidgety or uptight at all. But nuns, I think, manage it, for them it's probably easier if they've got something which interests them. So like our nuns are all studying and practicing, and that takes up so much of their energy that I haven't noticed that they get peculiar when they're around boys or anything like that. They don't seem to care. They're perfectly at ease. They did, when 2 years ago, we got a bus load of little girls that we weren't expecting, but were brought by one of their teachers. And that was a bit of a shock because the youngest one was about 4 years old. And the oldest one of these 26 nuns was about 12 maybe. And so we suddenly found the nunnery flooded with all these little ones. And each one was given to a senior nun to act as their auntie. And although, of course, the poor nuns weren't intending to become nuns in order to take care of somebody else's children, nonetheless, they took it all on board. They were very good about it. And several of them remarked that it brought out the mothering in them. So they were very loving to these little ones, and the little ones became very attached to their aunties. But I never noticed that any of them then decided after all they'd rather get married and have lots of children. They were probably waiting for the little ones to get big and not need them anymore. On the whole, I don't, certainly in the West, I think in India celibacy is understood because always India has a celibate tradition along the household life. In the West, the idea is that if you're celibate, somehow you go weird, and have all sorts of heavy psychological problems. And I look at the monks and I think how healthy they are psychologically. Here they are leading very celibate lives, but they look so content within themselves. They're not, they really don't seem in the least bit psychologically troubled in that way, wouldn't you say? But for a single person, of course, what is the sexual code of conduct for a single person? Well, I think it depends where you are. Of course, if you're in New York City, it might be different from Mumbai. So I don't like to say too much about that, but I would say that however you handle your sexuality, you should have a sense of responsibility and not involve people in anything which would cause problems or be in any way unethical. And I would say don't worry too much. I mean, sex is a part of life. Nature wants us all to get bonded and propagate. I mean, nature's only concern is to make more of the same. So since the actual having babies and all that is such a messy job, you have to make it seem attractive. Hence, But in itself, it's just one of those things like being hungry or anything else is a perfectly natural response. It's not a very big deal. So I think that the code of conduct for a single person very much depends on the society in which you're living. And definitely India has different ethical code to America, for example, in this modern day. I mean, the sexual ethical codes are also changing constantly. But I think that the important thing is not to use one's sexuality in any way to exploit others and to be, not create any problems. That's the most important thing. Just don't make any problems for anybody. Just keep cool, And if you have to be celibate because you're not married, no big deal. I mean, you go to any Buddhist countries, there are tens of thousands of celibate monks and nuns who look perfectly happy. You're not going to die. Your sexual organs are not going to shrivel up because you're not using them. I mean, it's really millions of people in this world live happily while leading a celibate life. Very uncomplicated life, actually. Relationships often just create more and more complications. I mean, don't always bring the joy that, romantic movies would leave, and they all live happily ever after. Tell me about it. So, I mean, I would just say keep to ethical code and then you cannot have any cause for regrets. How do people who are suffering from mental illness like insanity create their future karma? Well, if you're really crazy, then if the karmic results are considered to be less. I mean, like if somebody is really genuinely in the throes of schizophrenia or some really heavy psychotic illness and they do extremely bad things like killing people and so forth, then many people feel that the karmic responsibility is not good, but it's less than if you do it with clear intent, because you're not responsible. Like an animal, like a tiger or a lion, they have to kill because that's how they eat, that's what they're doing. So although killing is by itself a very negative karma, it's less negative karma for a being who has to, that's what they're programmed to do. And so it's much less heavy karma than somebody who doesn't need to do that and makes that decision to do so. So likewise with people who are mentally not responsible for their actions, then the karma would be much less than for someone who does it out of spite or anger or delusion. How to guide young children? At what age can we start to teach mindfulness? As early as possible, almost. I have known people who were teaching mindfulness to children about 3 or 4 years old. And certainly when these people from Pune came to teach the Goenka course to our nuns, they also did a day of mindfulness with our little nuns. And the little nuns really enjoyed it a lot. And they got them sitting for about 10 minutes. Of course, they're nuns, so they're used to sitting, even though they're very small, they're used to sitting. But 5 minutes, 10 minutes, explain why. I've seen, and some of you must have seen documentaries on teaching to very young children and children in schools, and asking children what they think, and the children really appreciate it. Because like focusing on the breath, or they have games for children now. I mean, they've become very inventive in how to make learning mindfulness fun. But the point is that it's like a refuge for the children. When they have very strong emotions that they don't know how to deal with, it gives them a center to which they can go back to a quiet center. And so the children really appreciate it very, very much. So I would say as soon as possible, not maybe, 4 months old, but by the time they get to an age where they can understand, like, 4, 3, 4, 5, definitely they are old enough. And I would recommend that anyone who has young children should look up programs on how to teach mindfulness to children. I'm sure that there's plenty of it on the internet by now. And there's certainly books written on it. And I think it's the most precious gift you can give to your children. Really. And those of you who have young children and do yourself a regular meditation, I think you should invite the children to sit with you even for some time, a short time, and get them, it's something you can share together, which is very meaningful. So yes, really as soon as possible, it's such a good thing. And now there are more and more teaching in schools, and again, children, even in troubled schools in inner cities, it has changed the whole dynamic of the classroom from both the teacher's point of view and from the student's point of view. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing just to teach people to come back to themselves. What is wrathful compassion? How does a man practice this in his family? Watch out. No one can be told, only inspired. Okay. What is wrathful compassion? Well, in Tibetan Buddhism, the symbol of wrathful compassion would probably be here we have Avalokiteshvara, who is the symbol of compassion. So here he is portrayed as you would think. He's white, he's holding a lotus, he's smiling, he's looking so sweet. Just how you imagine compassion. But the other aspect of Avalokiteshvara, his flip side, is Mahakala, the great black one, who, as Indians, Kali. So this is Mahakala, who is portrayed as black and very wrathful, with necklaces of skulls and so forth, and very, very wrathful. But he's still compassionate. He's the other side of compassion. Compassion isn't always sweet and smiling. For example, as he mentions the family, if the obvious example is if a parent sees a child, a small child going near, say, like a pan full of boiling oil, and says, don't go near there, don't touch it. And so, of course, the child, especially if it's a boy, is going to go closer. And no, don't touch that. And so they immediately want to reach out. And so slap, don't touch that. Now, that's not because you're angry, it's not because you want to hurt the child, but because seeing the child's ignorance, it's going to hurt itself, then one's compassion becomes wrathful. It's not that you want to hurt the child, it's not that you're angry, it's just that you love that child and you have to protect it from itself. So that's wrathful compassion. Doesn't mean beating your kids up all the time. But there are occasions on which one has to be very firm, and if one doesn't appear to be angry, they won't listen. But mostly it's not necessary, only occasionally. So in the family also, if there are occasions where one has to appear very firm and strong and threatening, that might happen, but not all the time. Only on very rare occasions is that necessary. What is the difference between Tibetan yoga and yoga in India? Tibetan yoga is its own type. Probably it's closest to the Kundalini. The Tibetan physical yoga is not like Hatha Yoga, it's much more vigorous and really is intended to shake up the whole body. It's not nice, gentle stretching exercises, that kind of thing. It's not like that. It's a very vigorous and quite challenging practice, which is preferably started when one is quite young, while one's body is still supple. And but the inner yogas, like the yoga of inner heat and so forth, I mean, it was all started in the plains of India, right? So even the tumor, the inner heat, I mean, it was started, in Bihar, where you do anything to get cool. So it's not in itself inherently anything to do with keeping warm, because when it got to bed, it was very useful. But it's the point is manipulating the energies. So it's very similar, all the chakras and the nadis and the prana and so forth. There are very, it was all started in India, so of course there are great similarities to modern hatha yoga practices and pranayama. There are some differences, but the basic ideas are much the same, of activating the various chakras, bringing the energy in through the central channel, and using the sexual energies to bring the energies up through the various chakras and so forth. So there are a lot of similarities. I mean, Tibetan yoga came from India. I'm afraid to meditate closed-eyed because it unlocks a lot, not emotions, but things I don't really understand, like out-of-body experiences or feeling or knowing things about people, especially their pain, without their communicating it to me. Sometimes I feel like I know what I shouldn't, they're most private thoughts. It scares me and I don't know how to know these things. I want to meditate, what should I do? Well, some people are naturally psychically much more attuned than others. That is certainly true. And some people naturally have this ability. For example, my Chinese doctor in Beijing, I mean, he just looks at you when you come in and he knows exactly where you're in pain. Pain? No pain. Pain? So he knows exactly where the problem is. He doesn't even often bother to feel the pulses, he just looks at you and knows. So some people have the facility also to know people's inner pain, their psychological pain, or even, everything about them, all their histories, etc., which they would do anything to block off because they don't want to know, they have their own problems, they don't need to know everybody else's too. But some people naturally have that kind of clairvoyance, so there's not much you can do about it, I don't think, except to try not to cultivate it. Meditate with your eyes open. In the Tibetan tradition, in fact, they do not close the eyes, they keep their eyes open. Eyes can either be focused just ahead, this much ahead, or straight ahead, or even up. But often they say just meditate straight ahead, staring into space. So if that helps and blocks off these other unwanted feelings which are coming up, then do that. Because as I say, in the Tibetan tradition, in fact, you don't close your eyes. You keep your eyes open. And so, and as to the other things, I would say just relax and not cultivate them, because unless you are a physician or something, then you need to know, be sensitive to others. Physical pain, it just is, it's not something which is terribly helpful. So, yes, so I mean, I would say just, And when feelings do come up, this knowledge of others' pains and problems comes into the mind, just feel compassion. Because one recognizes how people that one meets, even when outwardly they seem perfectly nice and friendly and happy, actually often inside they have so many problems, so many difficulties, which of course they are not revealing, but it's all there. So if one is very sensitive to that, then one recognizes that almost everyone one meets has problems. And just then take that as a springboard for developing great empathy, compassion, doing maybe taking and receiving and sending meditations when you draw in people's pain, send out goodwill, etc. This type of thing. Send out lots of loving kindness, lots and lots of loving kindness to all beings, and especially those that you empathize with and see that they are suffering. And like that, and meditate your eyes open. How does one transform an emotion like anger or fear by analyzing it? How does the analysis work? Well, the thing is that first we have, if we are any emotion that we have, the first thing is to recognize we have the emotion. So if anger comes up, the first thing is to recognize there is anger. And then the second thing is to accept the fact, right now I'm angry. Right now there is anger. And then we have a choice of what we're going to do about it. Now, obviously, the one thing we're not going to do about it is to throw more oil onto the fire. So we are going to have to use it in some way. So the analysis is only recognizing this is anger, because sometimes anger disguises itself as something else. I mean, for example, moral indignation and so forth, righteous indignation, which is the underlying emotion is really just anger, because there's always something we can feel righteously indifferent about, there's always something. If it's not one thing, it's going to be something else. But the underlying emotion fueling that is anger. So this is where, we need to recognize what is the real emotion there. And then either we can say, okay, so this is an opportunity to practice patience, or we can see, why are we angry? Why do we always get upset? Why are we always getting annoyed with people, with circumstances? Every time somebody does something we don't like, we get all upset and annoyed, or somebody really keeps pushing our buttons. Why? Why are we always angry? Always something. Then we can look and try to see, and often the reason is that we are not happy with ourselves, that really our anger is inner. And because we can't deal with that, we project it outwards to other people. It's other people's problems, other people's faults. We're always blaming it something. But the real core of the problem is the fact that we are not at peace within ourselves. If we were really at peace within ourselves, other people wouldn't really worry us that much. It's because we're so tight inside that it's like a drum that even, a tap makes a big noise. If we were soft and relaxed, then, it would take a lot to stir us up. So in this way, we can look and see, where is the source of this anger coming from? Where is it? It might be very deep-rooted or whatever. So then we have to apply the antidotes, such as compassion, loving kindness, empathy. The best antidote, of course, is to have no ego, as that's not likely to happen tomorrow. To transform anger through really systematically developing loving kindness, which in the beginning starts with ourselves, as I said. We're at peace with ourselves, we can be at peace with the world. But anger is the Buddha said that anger is karmically very negative, but it's the easiest to cure. because people don't like feeling angry. Whereas the root of greed and craving is karmically not so heavy, but it's extremely difficult to get rid of because people like their clinging and greed, provided it gets satisfied. They don't see any problem with it, it gives pleasure. So because it gives pleasure, then we don't make much effort to get uprooted. It's very difficult to uproot it, very deep in the psyche. Whereas anger is much more, in a way, much more superficial in our psychological makeup. And because it does not give pleasure, because it gives pain, we are much more intent on uprooting it. And it is relatively easy to transform the roots of anger into love and compassion if we put our efforts into it, compared with trying to uproot our greed and our clinging mind, which is actually very, very deep in our psyche. So learn how to do metta meditation properly. I mean, for everybody, it's a good thing. But for dealing with anger, it's the direct antidote. What is the importance of faith and how to cultivate it? Well, the importance of faith, the Buddha said that it's the first of the 5 powers in Theravada Buddhism, is faith. Because faith meaning confidence. It's not blind faith in something which you can't see, so therefore you have to believe it because, it's not that. In Buddhism, faith means a kind of confidence. Because if we don't believe that something can happen, then we won't move it. The Buddha gave the example of a river which was swollen in the monsoon. And so there were all these people running up and down the shore on one side and not knowing what to do. They need to get across, but they're afraid to go and they don't know what to do. And then one brave man with confidence plunges in and walks across and shows people that they can go across. And then they have faith in that. That gives them confidence, and then they all go across. So it's that sense of belief that we can do something. It's that kind of faith, that if we do a practice, it can work for us. If we really work on a path, then it will help us in this lifetime, and so forth. That kind of faith. I mean, Buddhism, of course, is a non-theistic religion. So therefore, it's not dependent on believing on some external force to save us. But it does believe on our own internal belief that we do have a genuine level of consciousness which is completely pure and perfect and the embodiment of wisdom and compassion that you have to maybe take on faith to start with. But it's not just faith, because if we practice, then we can realize it. So it's based on somebody else's direct insight into that. We have confidence because someone else has realized it and said, yes, it does exist, then we can believe it. Right? It's not that we don't know now, maybe when we die we'll find out. It's something which we can directly know in this lifetime, but right now we might not know it, but we have to have faith that if we practice in accordance with what the instructions, that we can come to know it. So it's that kind of faith. It's a confidence also that we can do it. If others have done it, we can do it. Why not? I mean, it's not that we just have to believe something because we're told to believe it, but we can believe it because other people have actuated that, and we can see ourselves that they're not going to lie to us. If they say, yes, there is the nature of the mind, there is Buddha nature, I mean, we can trust that they know what they're talking about, because why would they want to deceive us? And as we practice more and more and more, we begin to get some intuition that this must be true. So that kind of faith. I mean, we have to believe in ourselves and our own potential. If we don't believe in ourselves, we never get started. I mean, nobody would learn anything if they didn't believe they could. You know, I mean, you go to school with the belief that if you study, you'll learn something and you'll pass your exams and then you can go on to college. I mean, you have to believe that. You haven't done it yet. But you can believe other people have done it, why can't I? Right? So it's that kind of faith. If you go to school with the idea that you'll never learn what these funny symbols mean, and you'll never learn to read, and you'll never be able to add up 2 and 2, why can you? Because I can't now, and I'll never be able to learn, then that would be a pretty stupid child. But children know if they go to school, they can learn, and they're going to learn to read, and they're going to learn to do sums, and they're going to learn all sorts of things, and they believe that because others have done it and they can do it too, then they do. And it's the same in practicing the path. Other people, millions of other people have managed it, why can't I? When we are talking, discussing, thinking about happiness, wisdom, joy, peace, does that also mean lack of them? What? Lacking them. Why? I mean, I know people who have lots of happiness, wisdom, joy, and peace who are always talking about it, and they don't lack it. Why would we lack? We have all these qualities within us. All these qualities like wisdom and joy and peace are inherent within us. Sometimes they're covered over. And so then people come and remind people that we do have these things, and we can again see them and bring them up. And they're part of our inherent nature. This is the good news. The good news is that all our anger and our greed and our jealousies and pride and fears and all these negative emotions, our depressions, they are not inherent. They are called adventitious. They are called adventitious defilements in English, because adventitious means they are not something which is inborn. They are not inherent in our genuine nature. So therefore they can be removed. If we were inherently angry, greedy, fearful, then we would never be able to clean it up. It's like gold. Or silver is a better example. Take a silver pot and then you don't polish it, it goes black. And so when you look at the pot, all you see is black. But if we rub it, then we see the silver. Now the silver has always been there, and it is not in any way affected by the tarnish. Right? The tarnish is adventitious to the silver pot. The silver pot, however thick black it gets, is never in itself polluted. Right? It's never tarnished. It's just there. So all we need to do is remove the tarnish, and which can be removed because it's not inherent in the silver. Right? So likewise, in our mind, our wisdom and compassion and joy is inherent to the mind. So whenever we have good impulses, like to be kind or compassionate or generous or something, that is coming from our true nature. And all our anger and greed and jealousy and things like this is not our true nature. And for this reason, it can be removed. Very important to remember that we are not inherently evil. We are inherently perfect. If thoughts are so transient like bubbles, how do we juxtapose that with the fact that thoughts are responsible for creativity, inventions, and positive intent? Nothing against thoughts. Thoughts are, as I said before, we're not trying to remove thoughts. We're not trying to stop thinking. Some thoughts are helpful and creative and beautiful. Some thoughts are ridiculous and stupid, and also within creativity. I mean, people who invent bombs and all these weapons of mass destruction are very creative. They can create some evil, they can create incredible good. Creativity is just a creativity, but it's also just sport, which is coming moment to moment to moment to moment. It's just flowing. I mean, the fact that thoughts are transient doesn't mean that they cannot be creative. But it means that you don't have a thought and it's always one thought endlessly. And we all know, moment to moment to moment to moment, it's flowing. But of course, especially when the mind becomes a little still, I mean, we have deep levels of creativity which can come up. But that creativity, depending on the source of that creativity, can be a creativity for good or creativity for evil. I mean, those hackers on the internet are very intelligent. And sometimes they're very creative, but what do they create? So creativity also can go either way. But our thoughts are just thoughts. They are still bubbles, whether they're creative or non-creative. How do you distinguish between acceptance and giving up? I know there is a line between these two, a thin line. Sometimes I get confused. What is the difference? I mean, you know, you feel angry. We recognize it. This is anger. Okay, I'm angry. That is accepting it, right? It's not denying it. No, I'm not angry because tonight's people never get angry. I'm angry, I'm justified because she's a bitch. No. All right now I'm angry. Okay, I accept right now I'm angry. So now, what should you do? No, that's accepting. It's not being in denial. It's very different from giving up. Giving up what? Well, you can give up your anger, that would be good. But you don't give up working with your anger, trying to deal with the anger skillfully. They're different. A situation is very difficult, and we accept that it's very difficult. Okay, it's a very difficult situation. I accept it, but it's difficult. But then comes, so what? How to deal with it skillfully? What shall I do? Yeah, this is how it is right now. This is what's happening. I'm not in denial. This is happening. And it's not what I would like, but it's happening. So now what to do? It's not the same as giving up. It's a matter of just opening and seeing the situation clearly and accepting that's it. And then, the next step is how to deal with that. It's the opposite of giving up. But if we're in denial, and if we don't want to see, then it creates lots of problems. More problems. But if we accept, something inside relaxes also, and we can begin to see the situation more truthfully, and think how to deal with it. That's not being, no, that's not a defeatist attitude at all. That's a very courageous attitude. That we accept that there is a problem, and then next thing is, okay, now what? I think that's it. This other question is too big, and we don't have time. One should cultivate wisdom because wisdom is freedom. Why should we cultivate wisdom? Because wisdom is a freedom of the mind. It's a clear seeing of the mind. It makes the mind open and clear, and we can actually, for the first time, feel a sense of liberation, of the mind. And with wisdom, then conjoined with genuine love and compassion, then we fulfill our human potential. Otherwise, we're confused and left in ignorance and just creating more and more problems both for ourselves and others. Wisdom is a beautiful thing. As Einstein himself said, in this modern world we have a big increase in intelligence, but very little increase in wisdom. And we see that. Lots of people are intellectually very smart, they have a lot of knowledge, very little wisdom. Wisdom is something quite different. It's an inner knowing. Wisdom is a beautiful thing. Why would you want to cope with it? Yes, it's empty, but it's not just empty. He's saying because it's empty, so I bother. It's empty in the sense that it's open spaciousness. Empty doesn't mean nothing. Emptiness indicates the potential for everything. It's not solid and stuck. It's open potentiality. You could call it that instead of emptiness, if that helps. Because empty doesn't mean nothing. And so it's vibrant. And it has this open clarity, this luminous clarity of knowing, which is not based on my knowing, but just this open knowingness of the mind, which is freedom. So why would one not want to cultivate and be free out of the prison houses and so on? Because then one can really benefit others, you know? Otherwise we are all trapped in our own egocentric paranoia. And how can we help anyone? How can we help ourselves? Okay, so we finish here. Thank you so much for your questions. Thank you so much for your attention. We will just dedicate the memory. In Buddhism, at the end of any activity which is regarded as being positive and good, we share the merit with all beings. It like seals the activity, and we share it with all beings. We can share it if somebody is in trouble and we do something to gain merit on their behalf. We can dedicate it to them specifically. But in general, we dedicate it to all beings. The consideration is that if, for example, the amount of small merit I made from giving these talks is like the water here in the glass, and then if I drink that water, then it's all gone. Whereas if I pour that water into the ocean, then it will never finish, right? It becomes part of the ocean, so then that merit just goes on and on and on. So if we dedicate it to one person, it's like that much. But if we dedicate it to all beings for their happiness and well-being, then it's like the ocean. So that's why we do that. So thank you all very, very much, and thank all our wonderful people, our dear friends who have spent so much time and effort to put this event together so nicely, and the cooks who looked after us, and everybody behind the scenes who worked so hard. And really, we're very, very grateful. The people who have been dealing with all the IT technology there, quietly sitting at their screens, and all these wonderful people. They are so kind. And we are very, very good. I mean, I sit up here, go blah, 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 and I get all the credit. But really, it's because of all the wonderful people who have been working together so harmoniously to put this event together. So I thank you all very, very much. Thank you. And so now we're going to do the refuge ceremony. I think that has all been nicely explained to you now, so you don't have to be afraid. Those of you who would like to take it, you're very free to if you want to. If you don't want to, you're also very free now to leave. That's the end of the event. Anyone who not wishing to take refuge nonetheless wants to stay is welcome, they can just stay. But though anybody who does want to take refuge and the precepts will they please come forward. And everybody else move to the back or leave now. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
What about
I think the live webcast is continuing, in which case anyone who is tuning into us is also very welcome to take refuge along if they feel like it. I mean, there's nothing against that at all. So, I mean, and as I say, it's not that one is in any way taking refuge in me, and one is taking refuge in Buddha Dhamma Sangha. So therefore, even though one has taken refuge before, one can take it again just to, revive one's vow with it. And that's what it's about.
What about the questions that were not taken?
So, as I explained earlier, this is a translation from the Tibetan text which is used for refuge. So its language is a little bit archaic, but it's a traditional text. And so we start with the refuge. As I say, it's in English, so you know what he's saying. And then it will go on to precepts. And those who wish to take precepts, are very welcome to do so. As I say, it's just how to live in the world as a decent human being, basically. But if you don't want to take precepts, then you just keep quiet, okay? You're not going to be inveigled into saying something you didn't intend just because it's in a language you don't know. No excuses.
Jetsunma, would you like this to go on live stream or should
Yes, I think it is on live stream. And I just told them that they can take refuge on it.
No, what I mean is, you don't mind if it goes out to the rest of the world?
No, all the rest of the world can take refuge. I just told them. No, why not? Nowadays, some lamas are giving empowerments over the website. So, I mean, what's refuge? Okay. So, you who wish to enter the doctrine of the Buddha are extremely fortunate. However, it is necessary that you should enter by stages into the doctrine. For example, just as one climbs a high mountain gradually, or proceeds by stages across a great ocean. As it is said in the Root Sutra, as to lay followers, novices, and monks, one cannot perform the latter ordination without first receiving the former. So first, one must train in lay vows. Moreover, one must start by taking refuge. One should make one's request while thinking of the Buddha as the teacher, the Dharma as the actual refuge, and Sangha as the companions who practice the path. Think but having received the precepts of a lay follower, I must guard them for life. So to begin, could you please make please imagine, I remember when I first took refuge with my Lama Khamtrul Rinpoche, he's in his little room, he said, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the universe are gathered behind me. They're all looking at you, and they are really rejoicing that you are taking refuge. You can't see them, but they are all here present. So please think like that. We have here the image of Avalokiteshvara, but he represents all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the universe, who, if we think of them, are present, because there's nothing impedes, it's all mind. So just imagine all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the universe all sliding down and looking happy that you are all taking refuge, okay? So while you're thinking that, please stand up. And those of you who have problems, don't worry. You don't need to just prostrate in your mind. But please do 3 prostrations to the Buddhas and then 3 prostrations to me as your preceptor right now. Okay? So, but if you have problems in prostrating, just prostrate in your mind. That's enough. And then, when you have finished with the 6 prostrations, kneel. And put your hands together. Okay, now at a certain point I would say I named, and when I say I named, you say your name, okay? So please try to kneel, but be comfortable, don't agonize over it, We don't want you sitting there just thinking about songs rather than thinking about what you're supposed to be saying, okay? So put your hands together and repeat after me. Okay? Venerable One. Please pay heed to me. I named. Say your name. From this time forward. For as long as I shall live. Go for refuge to the Buddha. Supreme among humankind. I go for refuge to the Dharma. Supreme in desirelessness. I go for refuge to the Sangha. Supreme among communities. I request the Venerable One. To consider me as a lay follower. For as long as I may live. And again. Venerable One, please pay heed to me. I named. From this time forward. For as long as I shall live. Go for refuge to the Buddha. Supreme among humankind. I go for refuge to the Dharma. Supreme in desirelessness. I go for refuge to the Sangha. Supreme among communities. I request the Venerable One. To consider me as a lay follower. For as long as I may live. On the third recitation, one receives the refuge. 2 recitations have been completed. On the third recitation, at the moment of saying, as a lay follower, the lay vow will be born in your mind stream. So think in that way and repeat for the third time. Venerable One, please pay heed to me.
Venerable One, please pay heed to me.
I name,
I name
from this time forward,
from this time forward,
for as long as I shall live,
for as long as I shall live,
go for refuge to the Buddha,
go for refuge to the Buddha,
supreme among humankind.
supreme among humankind.
I go for refuge to the Dharma,
I go for refuge to the Dharma,
supreme in desirelessness.
supreme in desirelessness.
I go for refuge to the Sangha,
I go for refuge to the Sangha,
supreme among communities.
supreme among communities.
I request the Venerable One
I request the Venerable One
to consider me as a lay follower
to consider me as a lay follower
for as long as I may live.
for as long as I may live.
Now, I'm going to say, this is the procedure, and you say it is good, okay? This is a procedure.
It is good.
Okay, so now sit comfortably. Even if one obtains these vows but doesn't keep them, then no great benefit occurs. In fact, since a great fault is incurred, it is necessary to maintain the vows carefully. Having gone for refuge to the Buddha, do not pay homage to worldly gods. Having gone for refuge to the Dharma, abandon harming sentient beings. Having gone for refuge to the Sangha, do not befriend those of heretical views or associate in for a night with those of incompatible characteristics. Now, obviously, this doesn't mean that you can never anymore hang out with non-Buddhists. But what it is pointing to is that we are very deeply influenced by the company we keep. And so as much as possible, we should try to befriend those people who share the same kind of values. It doesn't matter about their particular religious orientation, but they should be good people. Because, you know, if we hang out all the time with very worldly minded people, we tend to get tainted by their outlook if we're not careful. And so as much as possible, we should cultivate good friends in the true sense of the word. The Buddha said that good companionship was the whole of the spiritual path. The first thing he did once he got out from sitting under trees after his enlightenment was to go towards Varanasi and create a Sangha with his erstwhile companions. So the Buddha felt that companionship with good people with good values was a very important part of the spiritual path, so we should be careful. As to common training, rely on holy beings, listen to the holy Dharma, practice the Dharma, and what is in accord with the Dharma. Your nature and senses should not be unruly. These are the precepts for taking refuge. Now we are dealing with the 5 precepts. The actual lay precepts are 4-fold, with the renunciation of alcohol as the 5th. If you think you do not know what is to be abstained, then just as the noble arahats, the arahats are those who have attained nirvana, just as the noble arahats abstain with their body and speech from those actions which are to be shunned, and turn away from them also with their mind, likewise I will abstain with my body and speech from those 5 actions which are to be shunned, and I will turn away from them in my mind. So then again, please kneel and put your hands together. Now, this is only repeated 1 time, so please pay attention to what you're saying, okay? Preceptor, Please pay heed to me.
Preceptor, please pay heed to me.
Just as the noble arhats,
Just as the noble arhats,
for the length of their lives,
for the length of their lives,
abstained from the taking of life,
abstained from the taking of life,
turned away from the taking of life,
turned away from the taking of life.
likewise I also abstain from taking life,
abstain from taking life,
and I will turn away from taking life.
and I will turn away from taking life.
I will train myself
I will train myself
in this first section
in this first section
of the precepts of those arhats.
of the precepts of the Dharmas.
I will follow their example.
I will follow their example.
I will act in accord.
I will act in accord.
Moreover,
Just
as the noble arhats,
as the noble arhats,
for the length of their lives,
for the length of their lives,
abstained from taking what is not given,
abstained from taking what is not given,
did not engage in sexual misconduct,
did not engage in sexual misconduct,
did not speak lies,
did not speak lies,
and avoided intoxicating substances, which are the occasion for heedlessness. Likewise, I named, from this time forward,
from this time forward,
for as long as I may live,
for as long as I may live,
abstain from taking what is not given,
abstain from taking what is not given,
abstain from sexual misconduct,
abstain from sexual misconduct,
abstain from speaking lies,
abstain from speaking lies,
and abstain from intoxicating substances, which are the occasion for heedlessness.
which are the occasion for heedlessness.
Through these 5 precepts,
Through these 5 precepts,
I will train in accordance
I will train in accordance
with the practice of the arhats.
with the practice of the arhats,
I will follow their example.
and follow their example.
I will act in accord.
I will act in accord.
So again, I will say this is the procedure, and you say it is good. Okay? This is the procedure.
It is good.
So, okay, so that is the 5 precepts. And as I say, we try to keep them as carefully as possible. If they are broken, then we express regret and retake the precepts so that we can keep the continuity, but without, bashing ourselves up too much. So now I would ask you please to line up, and I will just take a snippet of your hair. I'm going to take all your hair. You didn't know that this is all your hair, did you? Ha ha. Oh, right, okay, yes, so all of those who are on the webcast, if you have been following up to now, you can imagine that I'm taking your hair. So please, thank you so much for attending the program, and I wish you all well for the future. Thank you very much.
We can go around. We can move around. We're going to shut down. So,
It's a sign of renunciation, and that. Now, I'm just going to take a small snippet from those of you who had hair to take snippets from. And I will say to you, are you happy that your hair be cut? Yes. And you will say, I am happy, right? You just don't say, oh yes, that's great, or anything like that. You say, I am happy, right? That's all you need to say, I am happy. Okay. I'm happy. This hair will be thrown into the ocean or into a river.
Take as much as you can.
Yes.
I saw whatever I did, I pretended he was going to come up with this, which was more promotions at the time. To filter. Yeah, yeah. Well, I've still got, no, it's very miserable, so you get
Because it's such a, it's not a straightforward question that it's teaching will clarify
yeah.
question. Sometimes writing also it may not like interest in the question.
Yeah,
What is the
yeah, if we get well, if you answer, I mean, I don't know, I would be able to get some. Yeah. Yeah, I'll send you my email.
That's probably easier.
So much. Yeah, I'm just saying,
Okay.
but you know, sometimes yeah.
Think that's it.
You have to say thank you. That's all you need to say. Now we have the challenges.
I was waiting for this one.
Eyebrows.
Yeah, put on that.
I don't want to cut you, and don't worry about it. Yeah, you're happy.
Oh, okay. Put a nose there.
Yeah, no,
Hands.
Look, that's a very nice positive message.
Let's see. Let's see.
So who's left for haircutting? We're still. So there's one more copy under the tree and that's all. Okay. Thank you, Andy. Yes, come up to Himachal Pradesh sometime. You don't have photos?
My sister is.
Okay, we'll bring sister.
So good.
Yes, okay.
My understanding is that good karma gives good
Results,
good
yes.
results.
Yeah.
For reaping those good results, we have to get embodied again. So, my understanding is by doing good karmas, we are not going to nirvana. Okay, so I now, okay, that's one part. Second part is I understand doing selfless service brings purity of mind. But at the same time, doing selfless service when you are educating the children and all, it involves other factors also come in. Dealing with other people, when somebody's ego is getting hurt, this, that,